Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's stream. Hello, hello. Oh man, what a active chat. Welcome, everybody. Everybody shouting out where they're from. That is fantastic. Welcome. My name is Chris Sev. I am a developer advocate at DigitalOcean, and I am hailing from Las Vegas, Nevada, the city of lights. I guess that's not our official name, but welcome, everybody. This is our my first Tech Talk of the new year. Happy New Year, everyone. And in this Tech Talk, we'll be talking about one of my absolute favorite frameworks, and that's Next.js. And I love Next.js so much that I want to say that if I'm ever building a production level application, I would rather reach for Next.js instead of reaching for plain React. And in this webinar, this Tech Talk, we are going to talk about why I think that way and why I feel that Next.js is what is a production-ready framework. So welcome, everyone. Gosh, I love it. Active chat. So a little backstory on me. I founded a website called Scotch.io, and Scotch got about 4 million page views per month. And I get asked this a lot. This is built on Laravel PHP. And I get asked if I were to rebuild Scotch today, because I built Scotch the first time in 2013, if I were to rebuild today, what would I use? I believe I would use Next.js for the front end. And there's a lot of really great reasons for that. Next.js comes with a lot of amazing things out of the box. And before I jump right into it, I'll let you know that this is being recorded. It'll be up on YouTube after this. And please feel free to ask any questions in the chat. So the React framework for production, and I think this is a very, very accurate explanation of Next.js. We go down here, and I'll walk through each of these, a few of my favorite ones in this Tech Talk. Image optimization, a lot of work goes into image optimization. Next.js gives it to you out of the box. Zero config, out of the box. Incremental static generation, we'll talk a lot on that, and then there's a full Tech Talk coming in a couple weeks about that. Hybrid static site generation. If you have heard of static site generation lately, it's all the rage because we want to provide the fastest possible website to our users. That's 3, I guess. Fast refresh, really, really cool. It's a React feature where as you're coding, if you update your code, the browser will update itself and keep your local state in React. So really good feature to have. File system routing is amazing. Code splitting and bundling. All of these great things, we'll jump right into it. So I'm going to go here, and this is my terminal. My folder where I put all my projects is called Batcave, if you're wondering. So if I wanted to create a brand new React project, I would go npx create React app, and then I would name it whatever React app I wanted. Next.js gives us a little bit more. So how do we create a brand new Next app? Well, create Next app. I'll call this Tech Talk Next. Very, very cool there. Right out of the box, we can get up and running with Next. Let's see how fast this builds. And while we're here, let's talk about our agenda a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about the main features of Next.js, and we'll walk through a lot of them. We're going to talk a little bit about API routes, which is Next.js's serverless functions kind of implementation. We'll talk about fetching data and displaying sites. We'll talk about statically generating a site, and we'll talk about deploying Next.js. So we're going to do all of that in this next hour. I'm going to clear this out. I'm going to open this up in code, Tech Talk Next. And here we are in VS Code. Come on. And this is going to be the base setup that we have for a brand new Next application. And these are the files that we have. Let me zoom in here. We have pages. Underscore app is kind of an overall layout. Index is going to be our homepage. Public is where we put all of our assets as far as images and stuff like that. And style sheets are where our CSS go. Package.json is important to check out. And what we have here is scripts. We have 3 scripts, dev, build, and start. And these are just going to run the next commands. And here, check this out, dependencies next and React DOM. So very, very good to see. One of the questions, do you get faster loading times with Next.js? And yes, absolutely, especially when you statically generate your site. And I'll talk about that in a short minute. So if we go to pages, actually, let's start the server. I'm going to open up my terminal here. I'm going to say npm run dev. And this is kind of the developer command when you want to work with Next locally. So I'm going to start that. We'll be on localhost 3000. Let's open this up. There we go. And here is our Next application. So this is the starter Next app you'll see when you're building out with Create Next app. So this is the pages/index.js file. I'm going to split this over to the right a little bit. I'm going to zoom out of this, close that real quick, open up my pages index.js. That's still large enough. There we go. And this is the, well, let me get a little bit more room. There we go. So this is the default right here. I'm going to say balance outward and delete all of that. And as soon as I hit save, check out this fast refresh work right here, immediate actions and updates. So that's really cool. Once we have this though, let's go over here and say, hey there. So this is our first page. It's the index.js page. We don't even need this. This is a full React component right here for the home page. The first thing I want to talk about is automatic routing. So automatic routing is amazing. If you are working in React and you want to kind of change out the routing of your pages, you have to bring in something like React Router. In Next.js, comes straight out of the box. All we have to do, pages, new file, about.js. And now this is a file right here, export default function. Let's do about, no props, return, div about page. So that is going to be our about page right there. Now, if we do this right here and I say /about, check this out, we automatically have the about page. So routing is done just by creating a file. It's that easy to get started with routing. I know there's a lot of configuration when you're using the React router in normal plain React applications. A lot of questions about how the page rendering goes. I'm definitely going to talk more on this here, and there's a full tech talk on just rendering in 2 weeks. So look out for a link for that. But here we are, index.js. Another thing about routing is if you have pages, right? So let's create a new file. Let's say about / and then I'll say company.js. So now we have / about is a folder and company.js. Let's export default here. And I'm going to say company, I'm running out of room. Return div, div company page. So let me zoom out. There we go. So this is a nested page in / about / company.js. So if I go over here, you might see me ducking. My camera's like right in the way of my tabs. It's about / company. So when you nest files, we are going to see nested routes. Really, really cool to see. So you can build out your URLs that way. So all of your routing is done in pages. Really, really nice feature to have. Next up, I want to talk about code splitting and bundling. So when you are building out a React app, if we have a lot of pages, we have index, homepage, we have different article pages, we have an about page. In React, all of that will be bundled as one giant JavaScript file that you send to your users. Ideally, we want to send, if you're only visiting one page, you should only get one bundle size just for that single page, right? So Next.js does this by default. If I open this up, let me zoom out here. And let's do an npm, let me clear this out, npm run build and see what our final build sizes look like. We're building an optimized production build right here. We'll let that run. And notice that there are different pages here and different files for each page. So there's the 404 page, the about page gets 285 bytes, 288. So as our application gets way larger, a user will only get the file that they need for that specific page. And this comes out of the box, no configuration needed. Really nice to have. So that's a really good feature. And then if we go to our page, let me run dev again, npm run dev, localhost 3000, I'll refresh, I'll inspect element, network tab, JavaScript. So that's all of our stuff there. And then I'm just going to go to the home page. And that'll be a different file that we're getting for the homepage. So really cool to see. All right, next up, I want to talk about image optimization. So image optimization is a really, really important thing for web development. A lot of people overlook it because it is kind of a tough problem to solve. But the faster our websites are and our images are, then the faster our user loads them. So Next comes with a new image component since Next.js 10, which recently announced. So if I go to unsplash.com and I go grab a wallpaper here, let's see, let's go grab something gigantic. Let's go for, I don't know, these mountains right here. I'm going to download for free. And I'm going to open up in Finder, and I'm going to move it into our Next.js project. So let me do this real quick, and I'll show you. So let's call this Snowy Mountains. And I'm going to move this over to, let's go to my Batcave folder. Let's go to Tech Talk Next, public. I'll create a new folder called Images. And then in Images, I'll put this file. Cool. So now over here in public images, we have the snowy mountains.jpg. And if I bring back Finder, this is 1.8 megabytes of a file. That's a giant image that we need to send to our users, right? So if I'm in the index.js page, what we can do here is we can say import image from next. What is this? Next/image. And then here, I'm going to go ahead and add right below hi there. I'm going to say image source is equal to /images/snowy mountains.jpg. And this / basically says, hey, next, look inside of the public folder, and that's where you're going to look for public assets. And Next.js will actually take all of the public assets and make them available for your final production website. So here we are, I called it Snowy Mountains. Okay, Snowy Mountains.jpg. Let's go look at our app right here. Giant image. I'm gonna close that, right click, inspect. Thank you everyone telling me snowy instead of snow. So here we are, we're going to the network tab, go to images, and let's refresh, hard reload. And that is a 1.8 megabyte file, which is what we saw when I opened it up in Finder, right? So all we can do here is let's go over here and where did Finder go? I lost Finder. So let's reopen that up. I'm going to go into Batcave, Tech Talk Next. Sorry, real quick. Let's open this up, get info. And the image size here is, where are you? 4450 by 2967. That's gigantic. So to use this image from next image, we go image. Now we're using the image component from Next.js, which is basically a wrapper for the HTML image component. And then we go here and we say width is equal to 4450, height is equal to 2967. And there we go. So what this essentially does is it went ahead and tried to optimize that image for us. So just by doing that, let me right-click hard reload here. We went from 1.8 megabytes to 564 kilobytes of a file size, and all we had to do was wrap this in this image component. So very little change happened to our site here, our code, but look at that file savings we just got, right? Fantastic. All right. So one other thing that I want to note is, let's say we have a really small file or small browser. Let's say we're in a mobile device and I right click hard reload. We should see this file size drop, right? 564 kilobytes. Our mobile users don't need that much file. So what we can do here is we can say layout is equal to responsive. And Next.js will dynamically say, oh, well, you're a mobile device. Let me send you a smaller file. So over here, if I right click empty cache and hard reload, now we're seeing 82 kilobytes instead of, what was it, 154? And then also, check this out. There's a question in the chat from image responsiveness. It basically, what this image does is it right click, inspect here. It creates a source set, which a source set is what HTML uses to say, hey, at this size, I want you to send this image size. At this size, I want you to send this image. And basically, let me see if I can open this up, copy that, create a new file. Prettiest thing for sure. Let's see. Let's do all of these. I'll press enter. So this is what the Next.js image component creates for us. It basically says, hey, at 750 width, send in this file. At this width, send in this file. At this width, send this file. So this is called a source set, which is what HTML uses to determine which image to send. And Next.js does it automatically for us. So what we do here is, as I stretch this screen out, check this out. If I go full screen, we get this 236 kilobyte one. And let me hard reload here. So we get 236 kilobytes on large screen, and I'll shrink this down right here. And as it shrinks, it'll go ahead and request a smaller file size. So a lot of cool things there let me go to responsive, and then I can just stretch this out and it'll keep downloading the correct image size that we need. Right on. So that's the Next.js image component. Really, really awesome stuff. Also, that I didn't note is it will lazy load images for us. So if I went here and I did, let's do 3 of these things. 1, 2, 3. Go over here, reload that. Let's hard reload. Basically, we have 3 images here. We only have 1 loaded, right? So as I scroll down, you'll see the other ones get loaded automatically because of Next.js's image lazy loading built out of the box. So if I scroll down, check it out. Well, I guess it's the same image, so it doesn't want to load them again, but it will load as soon as you scroll into view. Let's see. All right, next up, we have optimization, static site generation. I'm actually going to move static site generation to below API routes here. And let's talk about API routes next. So sometimes when you're coding, you're going to need something like, let's say we wanted to go grab data from an external API, and we have a API key or API client secret. And that's something you don't want to put in your final bundle. So it would help here if we had a backend service like a Node API or a Node serverless function to be able to call and hide all of our secret keys and stuff like that. So the cool thing about this is that Next.js comes with what are called API routes. They're essentially Node serverless functions. And this API folder is where we put them. So this API folder here is hello.js is kind of the default one they send you, or they pack out with Next.js. So if I go to my browser here, and the cool thing is you can access these by /API/hello. I press enter there, and it's going to return JSON data here. And if I go back to my code right here, name, hi, let's go for Vitor Mello. Save that, and immediately our API will return the correct JSON data. So the cool thing here is that you can go ahead and create any API routes here. And then from your front end site, you can connect to your own API that you create all from within the same folder structure. All right, so that is API routes. A lot of fun there. If you are interested in that more, we can definitely do a whole tech talk on building out maybe an API using Next.js. All right, let me catch up on some comments real quick. Question from Troll A. How do you manage the server-side rendering load with this module, like image downsampling? So when you deploy this, you should, to get the image benefits, you have to deploy it as a custom node server. So if you look at Next.js, there's two different ways to deploy it. I actually have a YouTube video on how to deploy Next.js those two ways. One is a static site, and two is a custom node server. You're going to need the custom node server to do all of this fancy stuff for you. If question out of the chat, if you already have an existing Create React app, can you incrementally switch to Next.js? Yes, absolutely, you can. Basically, the Next.js docs do this better, and there's an installation section in the Next docs. But if you go to package.json, you'll have this for your Create React app. What they recommend you to do is install Next, and then change out your build scripts, and then change out your folder structure to kind of match, and then you're good to go. So that's how you can add Next to an existing React application. All right, so we've gotten a lot of questions on how Next works for rendering, for generation, for SEO. And this is the big reason I think a lot of people would use Next over plain React. And it's because that Next allows us to generate HTML files and create static sites. Let's see. Question out of chat, which I should have noticed. Does the /about does the about folder, thanks, Brad, does the about folder conflict with the about.js? That's a very good question. I don't know the answer. Let's find out. So this goes to the about page, and then it goes to company page. So it looks like both of these are working, the about.js and the about/company. The official way to do this that they recommend is if you want a /about route, you would not do this about.js. You would move it in here, and you would rename this to index.js. So this would be /about, and this would be /about/company. Good catch, Brad. Cool. So a lot of questions about so if I already have React Router, how does routing work here? I'm not entirely sure on that. I imagine you would try to get rid of React Router and then just use the file system routing. Not entirely sure on that one, though. What about a backend API for using with Next.js? The cool thing about Next.js, and we're going to talk about that towards the end of this, is how to get external data, is that Next.js can sync up with literally any API, right? So if you have a headless CMS like Strappy, like Sanity, like WordPress, Ghost, Prismic, Contentful, oh my gosh, it goes on and on. But any of those that have a REST API or have an API, we can grab that data with Next. And I'll show you how towards the end of this. Managing global state, I would recommend using React's built-in features like React Context to manage global state. You can definitely bring in something like Redux and use it as you would in a normal React app. Okay, so the big thing that the biggest feature I think of Next.js is static site generation. So if we're here, normally we would be able to create a React app and then have pages. But the problem with just plain old React is for SEO, if somebody comes to our site and says, hey, if a Google bot comes to our site and says, I want to parse this site for SEO purposes, and we're pulling in this data through JavaScript, through an API call, what that Google bot is going to see is div ID root or div ID app, and there's going to be no content in there, right? So not the best for SEO. And I know that Google says that they can parse JavaScript applications these days, and I'm sure that they can, but SEO is a big part of a company, and I'm not trying to really gamble on my SEO value. So for me, statically generating a site is very, very important for SEO. And to do that, let's check this out. Next comes with a feature built out of the box. We're going to go npm run build. Just one last time right before we export our site. And then we are going to go ahead and say npm run, or sorry, next export. Command not found. Of course not. So let's use, I don't have it installed globally or anything. So let's go ahead and do it locally. We're going to create a new file called, or new script called export. We're going to say next build and next export. So this is how we are going to statically generate a site. And if you are coming from the Gatsby world, Gatsby generates their own HTML pages. Next can do the same. Nuxt over on the view side can do this as well. Hugo, Jekyll, lots of good static site generators these days. So let's go back into our command line. I'm going to npm run export. So that will create an optimized build, and then it will go ahead and export. What are you doing here? Oh, okay. So one thing to note, and I said it earlier, is image optimization does not work with Next export, because Next needs that node server to optimize our images. Let's see. Did it generate the pages though? Yes, it did. So it was just a warning to say, hey, we can't optimize images if you use Next export. So if I go here into pages, sorry, into out, static, well, it didn't generate them. So let's go ahead and remove in index.js. Index.js here, let's remove this. And let's go back to the original image. But yeah, so let's go and export that again. Sorry about that. So good thing to note, image optimization is only available as a custom node server. And also exporting will also disable your API routes. So just something to note, if you are using API routes and image optimization, you have to deploy as a custom node server. And we'll talk about that for the last half of this video, since it's such an important concept. So now we can go here in this out folder. Here we go. We have an index.html. We have our about.html, 404. We also have about/company.html. And now our site is really, really fast, and it has all of the HTML ready for SEO value right out in these files. All right, let me just catch up on some chat comments real quick. Let's see. Perfect. Okay. All right. So, as far as an API route connecting to a database, you would use an API route here to connect to an API that you build on a server side. So, if you want to connect to a database, this could probably connect to a headless database, kind of like FaunaDB. Or if you had a service like a node service or a Laravel API that connected to its own database, you would just use this API call to connect to your other API. So APIs talking to APIs. Let's see, Gatsby versus Next.js. So Gatsby is really cool because it can statically generate the site for you. And I think that's a fantastic idea. Next.js takes this idea a bit further because it doesn't just do static site generation. It does static generation and dynamic generation all in one, which is really, really amazing. So let's say we had, let me try to write this out. Let's say we had 10 million pages, right? So Gatsby will generate all pages on build. So if you wanted to change, and there's ways to get around this, but overall, the main premise is you're going to build your entire site upfront, generate all 10 million pages, and then deploy. Now, Gatsby has solutions for this, like Gatsby Cloud, but this is kind of the overall here. And Next.js, what's really cool is you can not generate anything on build. And Next.js has the ability to say, okay, when a person visits a website, on first visit, generate the page. On second visit, show the generated page. I wanted that on one line. Oh, well. So the cool thing about this is Next.js can do, hey, no generation. Your deploy is really, really fast. And then it'll statically generate one at a time. So the first person to visit your page probably gets a little bit of a slower site, but not much slower. And then the second person will get that static file. Perfect. Okay. All right, so let's talk about that. Here we have this. Close a bunch of things out. And let's finally start talking about fetching data and generating a site with dynamic data. So here, let's talk about this Pokemon API. Anybody have a favorite API that they go to for demo purposes? Mine is usually the Pokemon API. So what I'll do here is we're going to have this Pokemon API, and here's the base URL, pokeapi.co/api/v2/Pokemon. So I can actually copy this, paste this in here, say /Pokemon, and see this in action. We get 1,118 Pokemon. Results is the array that we want here. Perfect. So we're going to take this and I'm going to use it in a React app, and then I'm going to use it in a Next.js app to generate some sites, some pages, and we'll see the differences here. So let me see. I started a CodePen before this for this demo, and what we have here is a really simple React app that does one fetch. So we have an app component. We have Pokemon right here in state. We have a use effect that says, hey, when this page loads, go ahead, fetch the Pokemon. I put a limit 10 on it and set Pokemon to our React state, and then just map over it and display the Pokemon. So once we have this, we have our entire thing here, and it's able to display them. But let me open up this in a new window, inspect element here, and let me show you something about how React renders this. It will go ahead, fetch the data after our page loads, right? Because it's on a use effect, and then it will populate that data. So on page load, this is an empty div, and then it gets populated after the fact, after the network call. So if I go here and I do Command-Shift-P, also side note, did you know that Developer Tools has a command palette like this? You do Command-Shift-P or Control-Shift-P. Let's see. Yes, I can share this code sandbox. Here we go. Let me share that. Okay. So here I am in DevTools command palette. I'm going to disable JavaScript. So if I disable JavaScript and refresh, you're going to see, hey, you need JavaScript to run this app because it's a React app and it runs on load. So now all that we have here is div ID root, empty div with nothing to show. So cool there. So let's take this a step further, and I'm going to close this out. I don't need that anymore. We're going to use the same exact thing. I need this fetch. And we're going to do the same exact thing in our index.js right here for our React or our next app. So you might be wondering, okay, so do I do a use effect here like this and then run all of my use effect stuff here and do the fetch there? So this is kind of the big difference between a Next app and a React app. Next has a specific way to grab data because, let me show you why. Async function, getStaticProps. So this function here will return props, And then whatever props come out of here will be accessible through here. So the reason that they say, hey, we want to separate out data fetching into its own function is because it has the ability to, one, statically generate. So every time we run npm run export, it will actually run this command and go fetch the data during that export. React and the use effect, they're so tied together to the template and to the component that it would have been hard to kind of separate the two. So here, specific function for fetching data. So let's go ahead and do the data fetch here. So if I go here, I'm going to say const res, and I'll use the async await version of this. Res is equal to await, fetch that. Const data is equal to await res.json. Now that we have data, we can pass this over here. We're going to say Pokemon is equal to data.results. And now by doing this, we can go ahead and get props and props.pokemon. Or we can fully destructure right here, Pokemon. Now we have Pokemon right here. And let me go grab that same code to map over it. I don't really want to write that again. And here we go. We're able to Pokemon.map right here. Let's go take a look at our app. Where's localhost? / right here. Oh, I need to run my dev server. npm run dev. Okay, we should be back online right here. There we go. So we have all of this stuff happening here. And let me show you a little bit more of a coolness to this. So here is our fetch initially. I can do a console.log hi from the server. This is Node running it. And then over here is, I can see over here, we can say console.log hi from the client. So this is the browser. So as we run this page, I'm going to right click, inspect, go to my console, and we have hi from the client. So you might be wondering, well, where is that console log from the server? That actually runs on the Node side, hi from the server. And it actually logs out the client as well. Interesting. But the server side only runs on the server side. So we can do this too. Basically, Next generates this from the Node side of things and then just throws out an HTML section for us. So we can do Command-Shift-P, disable JavaScript. I'm going to refresh and check it out. It still works. And that's why Next.js is so good for SEO, is because it actually spits out HTML and not just an empty div plus some JavaScript. So the next question here is probably, okay, well, I can statically generate something, but am I able to also dynamically do stuff on top of the static generation? Absolutely. You can still go get a use effect here and do stuff, do more stuff here, like go grab some more data. This is probably, well, not here, but you could do authentication checks using this dynamic stuff here. So a lot of really, really cool stuff you can do with Next.js because it does static and dynamic. So if I actually went here, I want to show this off. We are going to go back here. I'll cancel this out. I'm going to npm run export. So we're going to run that export command again. It'll build and export for us. Okay, so up here we have our, where is our forwards? All right, here we go. Here's our main site, 334 bytes now. So got a little larger than last time. And if we go to our file structure here, out index.html, we should see some Pokemon names. There they are. So this is the HTML file that is going to deploy and send to our users. Yes, Google can index client-side rendered pages. This is, so to me, yes, Google says they can, and they probably can. I think that when you have the option to, a statically generated site will be faster and may be better at SEO. So that's just me being paranoid. I'm sure that I am. But also, a static generated site is still faster than a client rendered site because a browser can faster generate and display HTML than it can to wait for a network request to the Pokemon API and wait for JavaScript to render the page. And especially if you have larger pages, it can be a little bit slower if you have a lot of like layout shifting going on. Let's see. When working with components, this is all personal preference, really. For me, myself, I'll put a components folder right at the root. So we have components and pages, and then each of the components, I'll design those out as I build out the components. So maybe a card component here, a button component here, and I think I did that all in one folder. But I'll do that as far as component organization. Let's see. Yes. So the question is a lot of like, can I use a lot of React stuff with Next.js? Absolutely. Next.js is built on top of React, so you have access to all of the React libraries, all that good stuff. Next.js does just give you a little bit of fun stuff like the routing, like the static generation, like the image optimization, code splitting and bundling. So ideally, like you could set all of this up with a basic React app and start bringing in a bunch of different libraries, but Next.js does it out of the box for us, and we're still writing React. All right. So let's see. That is pretty much where I'm landing on what I wanted to talk about here. The next tech talk that we have, which we don't have enough time in this one, and I figured it would be good to give it a full hour, is dynamic generation, static. Sorry, the word is incremental static generation. And that's kind of what we talked about, where Next.js will generate the first visit on a node server and then forever generate static pages or serve static pages. And also what I want to talk about is, let's say we had a folder. Let me zoom in. Let's say we had a file called articles, or let's say tutorials /slug.js. So you might be wondering, okay, well, let's say we have, like scotch.io, we have multiple tutorials where it's like / getting started with Next, / getting started with React. How do we generate all those? Should we create a new file for every single one? That would get tedious. So the way that Next.js does dynamic routes is you go here and you say rename, and you basically say, you wrap it in brackets, and Next is going to know, oh, okay, this is going to be multiple different files that I can generate for you. So this is something we can talk about in the next tech talk. And let's see. Yes, Peter is correct. You can't use all React libraries with Next.js. Next.js uses the node server for a lot of things, like in here in this index.js. Down here, it uses this on the node side of things, and in node, you can't really do console.log, or sorry, you can't really do stuff like window.location or anything like that, because window does not exist in a node context. So not all React libraries are usable, but just be aware that there is a node server doing a lot of the work in the backend. So that's why you may see some differences in packages. But I feel a lot of packages are good at telling you like if it can work with Next.js. I tend to perplex with a very good question. Does image optimization only work on images in the public folder? So no, it works with images even if they are an external source. Especially when we're working with images, we have images from a CDN. Maybe we're using something like Cloudinary. Images from an external source, you can set that up. If I go to nextjs.org, I go to the image optimization here, and I'm going to go, it's in, yeah. So this configuration section here, you can optionally configure image optimization for more use cases, domains. Basically, you create a next config.js right here in the root, and you say, hey, I want you to optimize any images where the domain is this. And Next will go ahead and do that for us. Will there be a talk about deploy and server setup on DO? Yes, I actually have a youtube.com. Go to, I think this is it. Yep. So here I have a Next.js. Let me see if it'll find it. Yep, deploy Next.js to app platform. So with this video that I made, there are two ways to deploy. One is a static site, which is really good. But if you want more of the advanced features, static site generation, image optimization, API routes, you are going to want to deploy as a node server. So this, let me throw that in the chat soon, is a really good video, 9-minute video to show you how to deploy to DigitalOcean. All right. Can you do split SSG and SSR? So SSG, static site generation, SSR, static server-side rendering. Too many acronyms. I don't. If you're asking if can I like generate X amount of pages and then not generate X amount of pages, yes, you can. And the way that you tell Next to generate a static site or a static page is to have a function getStaticProps. So if a file does not have getStaticProps, it'll say, well, nothing for me to do here. See you later. So that's how you can tell Next which pages to statically generate. Are statically generated pages optimized for desktop and mobile differently? I want to say no. You are going to have to bring a lot of that optimization yourself. But image optimization is gigantic for mobile to desktop optimization, and the image component can do a lot of that for us. Good note on Next environment variables. Thank you in the chat. Let's see. All right. So here we are coming up on about 50 minutes. We were able to, let's recap because there's a lot that Next does for us. So let's do one. We were able to create an app with Create Next App. 2, we were talking about zero config, fast refresh, which come out of the box. Automatic file system routing, one of my favorites. We have code splitting and bundling. So I don't have to write automatic because it's automatic. Image optimization with the image component in image. Let's see. Questions on progressive web app and testing. I'm actually not too sure on either, to be honest. Yeah, I'm not that much of an expert on either of those topics. Sorry to say. Thanks, Flames. I try. Let's see. We talked about API routes. We talked about static site generation. We talked about fetching data. Talked about, I guess, fetching data and getStaticProps. Let's see. We kind of talked about deploying, not really. Cool. Peter with a question: is there a way to do image optimization outside of Next.js? Absolutely. I would recommend going to Cloudinary. Cloudinary has their own JavaScript libraries, their own set of tools for optimizing images. And the cool thing about Cloudinary is that you can optimize from the URL. So you can say like my image.jpg. And with Cloudinary, you can just say width is 400, 450, quality is 80 or something like that. And you can do it all from the URL. So Cloudinary is a great option for that. Can I have dynamic meta tag viewport adopting? I'm actually not sure on that, but that's a great question. But the way to do SEO in Next.js, you go import head from next head. And then inside of your template, you say head. And then anything inside of here will be passed into your actual site. So if I am looking at index.js, well, let me run dev again. If I'm looking at localhost somewhere over here, yep. You'll notice the top title is localhost 3000. Now that I have this head component here, I can go and say title. Hi. So now the title of this page gets updated, and that's how we do SEO and meta tags using Next.js. Yes, you can do all of these things, title, description, meta tags, all that stuff. Thanks, Love. Does API routes work with getStaticProps? Yes, absolutely. You can go and say, let me get data. Let's try this, actually. API / hello. Let console.log that. Hi from the server. Let me refresh here. Didn't work. I think my route is wrong. Only absolute URLs are allowed. So let me say, my route's wrong. But, oh, there we go. So we are able to get an object and the data from our API route from our front end, all by just using this. So ideally, you would do this in an environment variable and then change out the environment variable. So we can say like const API URL is equal to next public, right? You would go process.env.next public API URL, and then you would do that, right? Almost. You would do an ES6 template string, and then you would go right here and say API URL. And that would probably be there like that. So that's a good way to call your own API route from your front end. All right. I think that'll wrap it up here. Any more questions in the chat? Throw them in the chat, and we'll wrap up pretty quick, pretty soon. Does Next.js support incremental builds like Gatsby.js? Yes, it does. They call it incremental static generation. So basically, it doesn't build it. So the way Gatsby does it is it says, oh, this changed. I'm going to go build that file. The way that Next does it is it says, oh, let me go get that file and process it. And then it'll say, oh, is this different than the one we currently have? Yes, it is. Okay, I'll replace it. So it's kind of a different way of thinking about it. I guess Gatsby does it proactively, and Next.js does it reactively. Cool. So yes, subscribe to this DigitalOcean YouTube channel. I've got a lot more content on Next coming here. Definitely check out Next.js and their official website for a lot of their cool things. I got a question on monitoring. Next.js Analytics is a really great tool to have that's able to use with Next.js. I've got enough videos on deploying Next to DigitalOcean and our new app platform, which we can deploy an app from GitHub. Hey, thanks, Flames. So the next stream on this topic will be in 2 weeks on Wednesday. And let's see. We'll have a registration link for that coming soon. We'll put it in the description to this video, and I'll also email you if you're on our email list. And there's a couple links for the Tech Talks to follow up on. Whew, that was a lot of content for 50 minutes, huh? And that's why I like Next.js a lot is look at the amount of things we were able to do out of the box compared to for React, this would have been a lot of, hey, let's go npm install this. Let's go npm install that. Next gives it out of the box. Matthew, with the question, can you add GitLab integration? We actually did. I believe it's live right now. Right on. Thanks, everybody. So definitely subscribe to this YouTube channel, DigitalOcean. And if you want to chat with me on Twitter, you can find me twitter.com/Chris__Sev. So there's my Twitter if you want to hang out. And DMs are always open. Love chatting about any coding stuff. But cool. Thank you for coming and joining to the first Tech Talk of 2021, or at least my first. And I'll see you in 2 weeks for the next Next.js one. Thanks for watching, everybody.